So co-op etiquette. This is a really sensitive topic for some people, but I will say first it begins with having good rules in your co-op. So when we, and I should probably back up. So just my resume on co-ops, I have run a co-op, started co-ops and run co-ops since, goodness, longer than I've been married to Eric. Because I was thinking, when we lived in Utah, the first time when my big kids were little, there was a great little Waldorf co-op that we wanted to join so bad that was in one part of town. And they had decided, after they had a couple of our friends come a couple of times, they decided that they needed to put a cap on their co-op because they were meeting in people's homes and it just had gotten too big. And so that was a lot of years ago. That was probably 15, 16, let's see here, it's almost 22. It's probably almost 17 years ago. And so we really wanted something for our kids. And at the time, my oldest was only like 5 or 6. And so then I had a 3-year-old and a baby at the same time. And so we were really just wanting a space for our kids to get together every week and bake bread and do things that were fun to them and that were along the Waldorf path. And so we started one there. We started in fact it was called Hobbit's Hollow. Now I remember. This was a lot of years ago, and I've had a stroke since then. So I was trying to remember this morning what was it called, and it just came to me. It was called Hobbit's Hollow, and it was when we lived in Salt Lake City, and we had a good little group of moms that came, and then there was the other group that that I said they didn't have room for us, but we got together for festivals, and that was nice. So even though we weren't rival groups, so we had friends within the groups, we allowed kids to come back and forth into both co-ops, and we had festivals together. So that was my first experience. And what we learned really quickly is that we needed to have some rules for those people who joined. So then when we moved to Idaho and we started another co-op up there, and that was really where the first threefold co-ops came from. We really needed to, we knew that when we started, we needed to have some rules. And then we moved back to Utah, started another co-op in Utah. And then when we moved to San Diego, I started co-op here. So I've been around the block on the co-op scene. I've managed co-ops. I've been members of co-ops or a member of co-ops. And so when I bring you is, like I said, about 17 years of experience in working with other moms and in working with other moms and working with other people's children, which I'm telling you is a very sacred calling to work with other people's children, and one you have to take very seriously. One that you have to really know that that's what you want to do, because it's really, as moms, the mom tiger comes out if somebody's being mean to our kid. And so you want to be that mom tiger for everybody's kids, which is a challenge. It's a challenge, not just your own. And then you also have to sort of realize that if your child has something going on, that you can't be the tiger for them when they've got something going on. You can be their advocate for sure, but when you know that you've got a child that might be the brat or might be and I don't like using that word. People are going to give me grief about the word. But you know the child I'm talking about, the child that's like falling apart and has no parenting behind it. So we had to make some pretty tight rules. And when we're in that spot of leadership, we have to sort of hold the space for all of those children. So our current co-op here in San Diego has about, we've been hovering around 20 moms. We're adding more moms every month. And right now we have about 40 children. And we started with about 10 core families and about 20 children. And then a lot of those moms that were in that core family or in that core group had more babies. And so we grew organically that way. And then we just started adding moms. We are very careful about who we have, and we have an interview process. And if you come to our paid training, I will walk you through our interview process and walk you through how to do it and walk you through how to do it without seeming too grouchy. Because when it comes to sort of allowing people into your co-op, you want to make sure you attract the right people. And that comes from, like, our interview process comes from trial and error, from situations where we haven't been very discerning about who we've invited in. So we're really careful about that, and we're really upfront that we're careful about it. So people can be mad and grouchy, but hey, I already told you this is what we're doing. So because this is what I told you, you can either like it, or guess what? San Diego's big enough for another co-op. That's sort of been our line in the sand. Etiquette. First, let's talk about moms. So if you are a member of a co-op and you're going every week, we're going to talk about your personal behavior first, and then how you deal with other people's behavior. So if you are a member of a co-op, let's establish what co-op means. So co-op is short for cooperative. And in the Waldorf world, I see two different kinds, and really only one is a true cooperative. So a true cooperative is one where all of the parents come together and work to have this group. That means everybody has some sort of role. Even if it's just a support role, everybody has some sort of role. The other cooperative or co-op word that I see used in Waldorf circles a lot is, or this happens sometimes in charters, when you just show up and you have another teacher, a teacher that as a group of moms you've hired. In my book, I'm just going to tell you, and you don't have to argue with me, that's not truly a co-op. A co-op is a true sense of everybody works together and everybody comes together. Everybody is truly like working to make sure that everybody's fed, working to make sure that somebody's taking care of the birthdays, working to make sure that somebody has the lesson in the circle, working, like all of those pieces are done by the moms in the co-op. It's not a drop off and run situation. It's not you dropping off your kids and leaving. That's not a co-op. A co-op is everybody works together. So with that in mind, if you are part of a co-op, I want you to first listen for yourself, and then you can sort of listen if you've got struggles in the co-op. So if you are a member of a co-op, think about how you're showing up. So in a community setting, we all sort of bolster each other up. And with that, that piece of paper, with that bolstering each other up, that means that sometimes, you know, maybe you've got sickness, and so somebody steps up into your space. But with that, you have to be the person too that others can rely on, because you're part of a community. So you need to really think about how you're showing up. Doesn't mean you need to take on a lot. Depends on where you are in your life cycle as a mom. You know, if you've got little ones, of course your ability to support's not going to be what it is if you're where I am, where my youngest is 7. So you want to really take stock of how you show up, because that is going to affect your community of co-op family there as a whole. So taking stock of how you show up personally is huge. Then you have the issue of, okay, so I know how I'm showing up, but Susie Q is just coming to just stir it. And you can almost see it. And you're not probably the only one who thinks it. You are in a setting where everything's going great, and Susie Q's late as usual, and not like 5 minutes late, but like 20 minutes late, and she wants everybody to stop and notice that she's late, and then she comes in complaining about things. So that's the kind of behavior that you want to be able to axe with your co-op guidelines. You want to be able to say, so this is our rule. If you're going to be late, and it happens, you need to not make a big deal out of it. You just come quietly, and that means you prep your children in the car. Hey, we're 10 minutes late today, and they've already started circle. So we're going to just quietly slip into circle. And it works so beautifully when everybody does that. Works so beautifully when we don't go, oh my gosh, you were late, but oh, we're so glad you're here. Nope. Do not give any attention to that behavior because then it just repeats. Don't do that. So you want people to just be able to slip in, quietly start. If you have somebody in your co-op that is this person that likes to then come and stir up negativity, you've got to be on it. You've got to be on it. There's a saying in the business world to be slow to hire and quick to fire. And I would say the same thing applies in the Waldorf co-op world. You want to be slow to let people in and quick to let them go if it's not working, because guess what? You know, if you're a co-op leader and you've put some personalities together, some temperaments together that just don't work, or maybe you've got great temperaments together, because I'm of the belief that all temperaments can work together when they work to balance. But maybe one person is like way out of balance and it's just throwing the whole co-op off. So you can, if you're a leader, you can have a conversation with this mom, and it will be hard at first, especially if you are not about confrontation. Let me tell you, even when you are more of like, cause I'm pretty choleric, and my co-leader is, she's pretty sanguine. So I'm choleric, sanguine, and she's sanguine, choleric. So we mesh really well. She calls me on my stuff, I call on her stuff. It works really well. That's we'll talk about in our paid training about like choosing a co-leader and all of that and how you work together. Excuse me. But my co-leader and I have agonized when we've had to tell somebody that they're done, like agonized. But that's because we love the community as a whole, and it's not a fun situation. But you have to lead. You have to lead, and we do not lead our co-op by consensus. And I would recommend that if you are a leader, that you do not lead your co-op by consensus, because the leaders are the ones that do the brunt of the work. Even if it's a cooperative, the leaders are the ones that do the brunt of the work. So you are the ones who have you're the ones who have the burden of making sure that everything runs smoothly. That's not something that is everybody's burden. It's your burden. Excuse me. So you want to make sure that you and your co-leader are on the same page with the struggles that you might be having. And the first thing that I suggest is, if you are having a struggle with somebody, is first looking within and saying, okay, is this just my struggle? Am I being overly critical? Is there something going on in my life that is making me feel like I'm doing this with this person, like I'm just butting heads? Or is there something that they're doing that is really frustrating me? Are there other people in the co-op that probably feel the same way I do? Maybe they've expressed it to you. Like first looking at yourself. And then, like I said, don't be afraid to call them on it. It is important, and you can be really nice about it. You can say, Susie, we just needed to talk to you a little bit because we feel like you're overly negative. Is everything okay at home? Are you doing all right? Is because we're just feeling like you're coming and you're picking apart everything that we're doing. And really and truly, we want everybody to be happy here, including you. And it just doesn't seem like you're happy here. Maybe this isn't the greatest fit for you. And she has the opportunity then, especially if you have a mission statement and core values that you've talked about with your group, she has the opportunity then to either say, no, I'm fine. I don't know why you would say that to me. Then you can go, but these are our core values and they're just not lining up with the way you're showing up. So, and you can be like really kind. You hear what I'm saying. I'm not being mean. And you can then point out, see, there's these two right here where we're talking about being happy and contributing in a positive way to the co-op. And it's just, we're really struggling to see that. So we're letting you know that we would like to see a change in that, or you are welcome to try a different situation. And you want to be careful with that if you're a leader, just because you've got kids involved. And if you've got with having kids involved, then they're sort of bonding to their friends. And in many situations, this might be the only like gathering that this child has every week. So by giving the mom the opportunity to assess herself, then she has the opportunity to sort of go within and ask herself the same questions that I suggested you ask yourself. And then she has the opportunity to say, nope, I'm done. Y'all are crazy. I'm just not doing this anymore. And just pull her kid and be done. Or she has the opportunity to show up in the way that you need her to, in the capacity that you need her to. Also, I would say that if you have any troublemakers in your co-op, give them a job. Have them do something. Getting them busy instead of having them be idle is super helpful. It's super helpful, especially if it's a job that may not be a big deal, but will seem a big deal to them. So they will take it on and they will put all that energy into it and hopefully turn them around, because that's really what you want. You really want to be able to have a nice cohesive group. And even if Susie Q is rubbing you the wrong way, gosh, if she could just show up in a different way, then it might be so much better for everybody. So you really want to be able to turn that around if you can. If not, if it were to continue with Susie Q, then I would give it, depending on how often you meet, I would give it some time, maybe 2 weeks. And if she still continues to show up that way, I would again approach her with your co-leader and say, hey, Susie Q, this just is not working. We're sorry. We realize how much you probably feel like you need to be here and your child needs to be here. But we talked to you about this and it's just not working. So we want you to know that this is your last co-op. And it helps by when you talk to her the first time, sort of saying, we're going to go a couple more weeks and make sure that things get better. So she knows she's on notice. And that way you're sort of giving her the opportunity to show up the way you like, that it's in alignment with your core values that you've written out. If you don't have sort of a statement of who your co-op is, what your co-op is, or some core values laid out, you probably want to do that like today. And then you want to present it at your first meeting this month, because it is important. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for everything. And I know that's kind of an old cliche, but if you do not decide where you stand, then you're going to attract all kinds of people, and they might not be the right fits. They might not be, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with worrying about and cultivating like the sanctity of your group. Like our core group is dear, very dear to us. And like each of us, there's not one mom that's in our co-op that I would not feel like I could call and say, hey, can you do me a quick favor because I've got this emergency? There's not one. Even if she couldn't help me, I got 16 others I could call. So it really is a beautiful space when you can all come together that way and everybody's on the same page. So now how do you deal with little Johnny, who might be Susie Q's son, who is just abhorrent? So first, I would say, as a mom of kids that have some special needs, you want to unpack that, because if you don't have any special needs going on in your home, you are likely just looking at things with the different lenses than those of us who do. But I'm also going to say that autism or sensory stuff is also not a reason for your child to be falling apart. It sounds like if that is your issue and you have a child that is out of control, you probably want to message. We've been on this road a long time. If you are struggling with how your child shows up at places, then it starts at home. It starts at home. So if you have determined that Johnny, who is Susie Q's son, is not a child that has spectrum issues, then you might need to approach Susie Q and say, I love you and I love Johnny, but Johnny is just mean. Or we are having issues. And it doesn't happen in a vacuum. Usually if there's one child that is, excuse me, that is a troublemaker, it's happening not just to your child, it's happening over and over and over again. So, and chances are, for those of you who are in this situation and agonizing over talking to Johnny's mom already knows he's a brat. So it's your job to be kind, but to also put a boundary down and say, you know, whatever is going on. In the last month, you want to bring examples. Johnny's been hitting and biting and kicking sand in kids' faces, and we can't have that behavior here. We want this to be safe for everyone. So we're inviting you to be closer to Johnny and really hold the space. Because that's one big thing. I mean, we talk in our co-op all the time about holding the space with your children. And when they're not in a class and we break out into classes, then mom is expected to hold the space on the playground, in the field, wherever your child is. You're expected to be there. That's part of showing up in a co-op, is not sitting and pouring your heart out to another mom who, you know, and having your own little conversation. Your job as a co-op member is to hold the space for your child, period. And then have mom time at another time. So that's part of being a community. So really and truly, when it comes to sort of working with kids that you're having a major struggle with, one of the first things that I do, and, you know, like I said, we have 40 kids. I didn't love all of them in the beginning. I had to really work at that. I really had to. There are some kids that generally you feel really good about. And like that, I like how that child is showing up. And there might be some kids where you're like, I don't like that child. I don't want to be near that child. So one of the things I've had to do with some kids is really sort of go within myself and go, all right, my job as a leader is to show up and love everybody. How do I love Johnny? How do I figure that piece out? And figuring out what's rubbing you the wrong way about Johnny is going to help you. And you can't do a laundry list of, well, his parenting is bad and he watches too much TV. Don't do that, because hopefully you have not attracted that person to your co-op. But if you have, then you have to be able to talk to the mom. And if you're listening and you're thinking, I don't know how I would talk to the mom, I would first talk, if you're not the leader, talk to your leader. If it is the leader's child, because that was one of the emails that I got. One of the emails I got was, I have this great co-op, I really love it, but the leader's child is just out of control. Talk to the leader. Because sometimes people get so worried about talking to the leader. Listen, if Soraya is doing something that is irritating other children, I want to know. Not because I'm going to go like beat her or anything crazy like that, but because either I can say, you know, you're right, she's had a really rough month. And we're working on some new supplements with her, and it's just not going right. I am so sorry that that's been your experience with her. Can you tell me exactly what happened so that we can work on fixing it? And then Soraya, guess what? Gets to fix it because she's 7. Even if she were 4, we'd be like, okay, talk to me about why you're so mean to Johnny. It would be like that. Because we want everybody to feel safe there. And that helps when you talk to that child about being safe. It also helps if you are leading circle time and you've got some kids in the mix that aren't, you know, doing well. You gather everybody together and you talk about being kind. There's nothing wrong with that. You talk about being kind. We talk about that in our co-op on a regular basis, about being kind to one another. You know, because we've got kids from birth to 13. So there's bound to be some struggles in there. So you want to talk about being kind all the time. And you know, so if you've got this sort of etiquette issue, you need to take it head on. Take it head on and make sure that you are first separating your feeling from it. It's really hard when your child is a child being picked on. I have been there. It's really hard. So you got to separate yourself and look at it from a different perspective and go, okay, what's really going on here? They're really being mean to my child and excluding them, or, you know, what's going on? One of the things that we say at co-op is not an individual play date. So you get to play with everybody when you're here on Tuesday. Any other day of the week, you are welcome to just play with that one child. But when you are here, you play with everybody. Everybody's welcome. Everybody's like, because I only have one rule. And this has been my one rule like for a long time for all co-ops, any class that I teach. Everybody is supposed to have fun. That includes me. And that includes every child there. So guess what? If Johnny is making it so that Jenny can't have fun, then nobody's having fun. It's our responsibility as a community to work together to have fun. And that means we all have to work on how we're showing up. And there's nothing wrong with teaching children how to show up. And there's nothing wrong with going, okay, Johnny's having a really bad day. We're going to go home, even if you're the leader. I have done that. I have said, Soraya, this is the last time we're talking about this. And if we have to talk about it again, we're going to go home. Guess what? We've gone home. We've left grocery stores. We've left, we've left Target. There's so many places. If you are in a situation where your child needs you, don't be worried about leaving. You just need to leave. I counsel our moms to do that all the time. Our moms in our co-op, our moms that I work with. If you are in a situation where your child is really having a hard time holding it together, and it happens to all children, that you just be able to say, okay, we're gonna just go because it's not working. You gotta do it without being mad. Even if you really needed to be at the grocery store. I'm so glad that the grocery stores have delivery now. Do you know how much nicer that would have been when my big kids were little if I could have just called the store and said, hey, Kroger, could you send me some milk and eggs and bread? But now you can do that. So really, don't be afraid to leave if you need to leave. All next week.